The sensor technician's appendages trembled as unprecedented energy readings flooded his monitoring station. Silic had served aboard the Galactic Confederation outpost for 12 cycles, and nothing had ever disrupted his carefully maintained calm like this. "High Commander," he chittered, fear evident in his compound eyes. "I'm detecting anomalous readings from Sector 47 Epsilon. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database." High Commander Vexella glided across the command deck, her translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns of concern. The outpost, positioned at the edge of Confederation space, was meant to be a quiet posting, monitoring uninhabited systems and occasionally guiding lost merchant vessels back to established routes. "Magnification," she ordered, her harmonic voice resonating through the chamber. The holofield shimmered and expanded, showing what at first appeared to be a cluster of asteroids. But asteroids didn't move in perfect formation. Asteroids didn't emit controlled bursts of fusion energy, and asteroids certainly didn't adjust course when detecting observation. By the first light, Vexilla whispered, a phrase only used in moments of true significance. "Contact the Central Council immediately. We have a first contact scenario." Within 12 hours, Ambassador Zilter's diplomatic vessel was approaching the coordinates. As the most experienced xenodiplomat in the Confederation's history, the Vespidian had overseen 15 first contact scenarios. Each had followed predictable patterns. Primitive species, newly emerged from their homeworlds, seeking protection or trade from the 17 advanced civilizations that formed the Confederation. This would be different. He sensed it in the uncharacteristic urgency of his summons and the hushed tones of the council briefing. Even his molted exoskeleton felt tight with anticipation. "Ambassador, we've established visual range," announced his pilot, a Mersian whose webbed hands manipulated the crystalline controls with practiced grace. "Displaying now." The view screen filled with images that defied Zilter's expectations. These weren't the elegant, organic vessels favored by evolved species. These weren't the crude, makeshift ships of newcomers to the stars. These were weapons. Weapons given form and purpose and launched into the void. Dark angular hulls of composite materials and strange alloys reflected starlight in ways that confounded the ship's sensors. Protruding structures that could only be armaments dotted the vessels in patterns suggesting interlocking fields of fire. Most disturbing were the scars visible on some ships. Evidence of past conflicts, preserved rather than regenerated. 17 distinct vessels of varying configurations, reported Science Officer T. Larry, her translucent skin pulsing with nervous energy. The largest measures approximately 1.7 korins in length. A korin was roughly equivalent to 1 Earth kilometer, though none aboard knew this yet. "Life signs?" Ziltor inquired, his mandibles clicking unconsciously. "Abundant, thousands per vessel. Carbon-based, from initial readings." "But Ambassador," T. Larry's voice trailed off. "Continue, Science Officer. They're generating power through controlled fusion reactions. That's theoretically impossible without singularity containment." Before Ziltor could process this revelation, Communication Officer Ral announced, "We're receiving a transmission, Ambassador. Audio and visual, structured data patterns suggesting a deliberate attempt at communication." "Display," ordered Ziltor, smoothing his ceremonial robes. The screen shifted to show a creature that none aboard had ever seen. Bipedal, with dark fur atop its head and smooth skin elsewhere. It wore a uniform of deep blue, with glinting metal at the shoulders and collar. Most striking were its eyes, dark as space itself, but reflecting starlight like twin galaxies. "This is Admiral Elena Reyes of the United Earth ship Prometheus," spoke the creature in a voice that the ship's translation matrix struggled to process. "We represent humanity on its first journey beyond our solar system. We come in peace and with respect for any sentient life we encounter." Ziltor felt the weight of history pressing upon him. This was why he had been chosen, to meet the unexpected with grace and wisdom. "I am Ambassador Ziltor of the Galactic Confederation," he responded, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into what he hoped was comprehensible sound. On behalf of the 17 united species of our alliance, I extend greetings to humanity. Admiral Rice smiled. A gesture Ziltur would later learn indicated either friendliness or predatory anticipation, depending on context. Ambassador, we would be honored to receive a delegation aboard our vessel as a gesture of peaceful intent. The command deck fell silent. Such an invitation was unprecedented in first contact protocols. It was either madness or the opportunity of a lifetime. We accept with gratitude, Ziltur decided, ignoring the gasps from his staff. As a diplomat, he recognized the importance of this moment. And as a scientist at heart, his curiosity would not allow him to refuse. What no one aboard the diplomatic vessel could have predicted was how profoundly their understanding of the galaxy was about to change. "This is unprecedented," hissed Security Chief Vrak, his scale-lined throat flushing crimson with agitation. "No species invites foreign dignitaries aboard their vessels during first contact. It violates every safety protocol we've established." Ambassador Ziltur observed his security chief with practiced patience. The Residian was doing his job, assessing threats and protecting the delegation, but diplomacy sometimes required calculated risks. "They call it the UES Prometheus," whispered Science Officer T. Larry, her translucent skin pulsing with nervous energy as she reviewed the preliminary scans. "Named after a mythological figure from their homeworld, perhaps. Or a warning," muttered Vrak. Ziltur clicked his mandibles in the Vespidian equivalent of a thoughtful sigh. "Prepare the shuttle. T. Larry, Vrak, you will accompany me." Communication Officer Ral, maintain continuous contact. As the diplomatic team boarded their shuttle, an elegant organic vessel that resembled a seed pod more than a spacecraft, Ziltur accessed the preliminary cultural data that the Prometheus had transmitted. Humanity had evolved on a planet they called Earth, the third world in a system of 8. They measured time in years, which appeared approximately equivalent to 0.7 Confederation cycles. Most intriguing was their brief mention of nations, suggesting their species had developed competing social structures rather than the unified emergence typical of most spacefaring civilizations. The short journey to the Prometheus revealed the true scale of the human vessel. What had appeared massive from a distance became intimidating up close. The shuttle approached a designated docking bay, passing through a series of marker buoys that Vrak identified as automated defensive systems. "They're scanning us," T. Larry noted, monitoring her instruments. Incredibly detailed scans, penetrating our hull with surprising precision. As they passed through what appeared to be an empty section of space, their instruments momentarily flickered and died before reactivating. Vrak's scales flared in alarm. "Electromagnetic disruption field," he said, "powerful enough to disable our systems temporarily." And that was merely the outer defensive layer. Ziltur realized with growing unease that this vessel had been designed with warfare in mind. The Confederation had largely abandoned such concepts millennia ago, with only police actions and the occasional pirate deterrent necessitating armed ships. This was something else entirely, a fortress among the stars. The docking bay opened like the maw of some great predator, revealing a cavernous interior of metal and composite materials. There was no attempt at aesthetic harmony, just functional, modular design with redundancy evident in every system. Most striking were the humans themselves, standing in perfect formation at the docking point, wearing identical dark blue uniforms with various insignia. As the shuttle settled onto the deck, artificial gravity slightly stronger than the Confederation standard pulled at Ziltur's exoskeleton. Another subtle reminder of differences. The shuttle door opened, and Ambassador Ziltur stepped onto the deck of humanity's flagship, the first of his kind to make contact with this strange new species. A human stepped forward from the assembled line. It was Admiral Rice, smaller in person than the screen had suggested, but with a presence that filled the vast hangar. "Ambassador Ziltur, on behalf of the United Earth Government and all humanity, welcome aboard the Prometheus." Her voice carried clearly without apparent amplification. Ziltor performed the Confederation greeting, a complex gesture of his upper limbs symbolizing peaceful intent. "Admiral Reyes, we are honored by your hospitality. May this meeting mark the beginning of understanding between our peoples." The Admiral smiled and gestured toward a corridor. "Please follow me. We've prepared appropriate atmospherics and gravity adjustments in our conference facilities." As they walked, Ziltor noticed that for every human in formal uniform, there were at least 3 others working at various stations, maintaining equipment or moving purposefully through the ship. The vessel hummed with activity, like a hive of his own species, but ordered in ways he found difficult to categorize. "Your ship is impressive," Larry ventured, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic reserve. "Our preliminary scans suggest capabilities beyond anything in the Confederation database." Admiral Reyes nodded. "The Prometheus is our first deep space exploration vessel. She's designed to be self-sufficient for missions up to 10 years in duration without resupply." "And the armaments?" Vrak asked bluntly, indicating a recessed section of wall that clearly housed weapon systems. For a moment, Admiral Reyes' expression changed, something subtle that Ziltor couldn't interpret with his limited understanding of human facial expressions. "Pride, caution, embarrassment. Standard defensive systems," she replied evenly. "Space is vast and unknown. We believed it prudent to be prepared for any contingency." The corridor opened into a broader thoroughfare, where the ceiling rose 3 levels high. Humans moved across walkways and platforms, some in different colored uniforms, others in what appeared to be specialized equipment. "This is Central Promenade," Admiral Reyes explained. "From here, you can access most public areas of the ship." "Public areas?" Ziltor inquired. "There are restricted sections." The Admiral's smile returned, showing briefly what Ziltor would later learn were called teeth. "On every ship, Ambassador, there are places visitors don't go. I'm sure the same is true in your Confederation." What struck Ziltor most was not what they were being shown, but what such a vessel implied. Humanity had built this enormous ship, clearly at tremendous resource cost, without knowing other intelligent life existed. What kind of species prepared for war against an enemy they had never met? "This isn't a corridor, it's a kill box," muttered Security Chief Vrak as they proceeded deeper into the Prometheus. His professional eye hadn't missed how every passageway featured multiple choke points, blast doors, and recessed compartments that almost certainly concealed automated defense systems. Lieutenant Commander Hiroshi Ishida, their assigned guide, led them through a bewildering maze of passages. Unlike the flowing, organic architecture favored by Confederation species, the human ship embraced brutal geometry and redundant systems. Every door was reinforced, every junction defensible. "This section houses one of our 16 independent command centers," explained Ishida, his voice carrying unmistakable pride as they entered a chamber where humans monitored displays showing information at rates that made Larry's translucent skin pulse with excitement and confusion. 16 command centers, she asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic reserve. "Is that not inefficient?" Ishida smiled. "Redundancy is central to human engineering philosophy, especially for deep space missions. If one system fails, another takes over without interruption." Ambassador Ziltor observed the bustling command center with growing unease. The humans were allowing them to see military capabilities far beyond anything the Confederation possessed. Either these humans were dangerously naive, or, more worryingly, they were so confident in their superiority that they felt no need for secrecy. "Your species values preparation," Ziltor remarked carefully. "We value survival," corrected Admiral Reyes, who had rejoined their tour. "History has taught humans to hope for the best while preparing for the worst." They continued to a vast chamber that Ishida identified as Hydroponics Bay 3 of 7. Inside, lush vegetation grew in precisely arranged tiers, tended by humans and sophisticated robotic systems. We produce approximately 60% of our oxygen and 40% of our food supplies on board, Ishida explained. Each bay is isolated and can be sealed in case of contamination. These are edible plants from your homeworld? Asked Tilari, examining a vine heavy with red fruits. Tomatoes, confirmed Ishida. Modified for space cultivation, but essentially the same plants our ancestors grew for thousands of years. Vrak, ever vigilant, had been counting security personnel and weapons emplacements throughout their tour. Your crew is very disciplined, he observed. They move with military precision. Admiral Rice nodded. Every crew member on the Prometheus receives combat training, regardless of their primary function. It's standard procedure. The implication wasn't lost on Ziltur. On a Confederation vessel, perhaps 1 in 20 crew members would have security training. Here, it appeared to be universal. Their tour culminated in what humans call the officers' mess, a dining facility where they were invited to share a meal. Specially prepared nutrient solutions had been synthesized for the alien guests based on biochemical data they had provided. As they settled at the table, Ambassador Ziltur finally asked the question that had been troubling him since their arrival. Admiral, your species built these ships without knowing aliens existed. Why then did you construct vessels so heavily armed? What enemy were you anticipating? The room grew quiet. Human officers exchanged glances that the aliens couldn't interpret. Admiral Rice set down her drinking vessel, water glass, the translator supplied, and met Ziltur's compound eyes directly. Ambassador, humanity's history is marked by conflict. When we look to the stars, we hope to find friends, but we prepared to find reflections of our worst selves. Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she continued. We built these ships not because we knew what was out there, but because we know ourselves. The profound implication of her statement sent a tremor through Ziltur's exoskeleton. Before he could formulate a response, alarms blared throughout the ship. The relaxed demeanor of every human in the room vanished instantly, replaced by lethal focus. Multiple vessels approaching from Sector 7, announced a disembodied voice. Energy signatures match Skaraxi configurations. Admiral Rice stood, her expression hardening. Ambassador, it appears your Confederation has some internal political divisions we should discuss. But first, we need to secure this ship. The transformation was immediate and total. Where moments before there had been dining officers, now stood combat personnel. Admiral Rice pressed her palm against what had appeared to be a decorative wall panel, revealing the hidden command console. Status report, she ordered, her voice calm but carrying new authority. A holographic display materialized above the table, showing tactical positions. Ziltur recognized the sleek, predatory silhouettes immediately. Skaraxi vessels, he chittered in alarm. They're a militaristic faction within the Confederation. This attack violates our most fundamental laws. Lieutenant Commander Ishida escorted the alien delegation to a viewing port where the unfolding situation became horrifyingly clear. 3 human escort ships had taken direct hits from Skaraxi energy weapons. But instead of shattering as Confederation vessels would have, they rotated damaged sections away and continued fighting. How are your ships still operational after those impacts? T. Larry asked, her scientific curiosity overriding fear. Compartmentalized damage control, Ishida explained briefly. Each section can be isolated. A hit might disable part of a ship, but rarely the whole vessel. Through the viewport, Ziltur watched as the Prometheus transformed. Weapon systems emerged from hidden compartments. Armored plates shifted to create overlapping fields of fire. The ship's internal gravity adjusted so smoothly that Ziltur only noticed when he saw humans running along walls and ceilings to battle stations. The Skaraxi have violated our non-aggression pact, Ziltur gasped, mandibles clicking in distress. This is unprecedented. Admiral Rice, now standing at her command console reviewing incoming data, replied without looking up. Their formation suggests they expected to catch us unprepared. They've made a significant miscalculation. Security Chief Rack's scales had paled to an ashen gray. "Admiral, why would they attack when their delegation is currently aboard your vessel?" "It's suicide." A human officer approached with a data tablet. "Ma'am, we've intercepted communications. The Skaraxi don't know about Ambassador Zilter's delegation. They believe they're making a preemptive strike against an unknown threat." "How many vessels?" Rise asked. 7 attack craft and 1 command ship," the officer replied. Rise nodded once. "Implement Defense Protocol Echo. Minimal casualties if possible." Ziltor felt the subtle vibration as the Prometheus's engines shifted to combat configuration. Outside, the human fleet reorganized with frightening speed, moving from exploration pattern to a defensive formation that protected the flagship while creating clear firing lanes. "Your ships move with remarkable coordination," T. Larry observed, her voice carrying both scientific admiration and fear. "Integrated tactical systems," Ishida explained. "All vessels share targeting data and positional information in real time." The first exchange of fire was brief but devastating. Skaraxi ships launched their feared quantum disruptors, weapons officially banned by Confederation treaty. The energy beams struck one human vessel directly, creating a brilliant flash of impact. When the light faded, the human ship remained intact, surrounded by a shimmering field that slowly dissipated. "Energy dispersal shields," whispered T. Larry in disbelief. "That's theoretically impossible." The human counterattack was measured and precise. Rather than unleashing their full arsenal, they disabled the propulsion systems of 2 Skaraxi ships with surgical strikes, leaving them adrift but intact. "You're showing restraint," Ziltor observed, turning to Admiral Reyes. "Why?" She met his compound eyes with her dark human ones. "Because this is clearly a misunderstanding, Ambassador. We have no desire to start our relationship with the Confederation by destroying a portion of your fleet, even if they fired first." Vrak moved closer to Ziltor, lowering his voice. "Ambassador, I've been monitoring their weapons systems. They're using perhaps 5% of their offensive capability. This isn't a battle. It's a demonstration." The realization chilled Ziltor to his core. The humans weren't fighting for survival. They were sending a message, not just to the Skaraxi, but to the entire Confederation. As if reading his thoughts, Admiral Reyes spoke. "Ambassador, please open a channel to your Confederation leadership. I believe it's time for a more comprehensive introduction." The battle unfolding before Ziltor defied comprehension. The human vessels moved in formations so complex they appeared choreographed, creating overlapping fields of defensive fire while exposing minimal target profiles. Communication Officer Rel, still aboard the alien diplomatic vessel, managed to establish a secure channel to the Prometheus. "Ambassador, the Confederation Council is in emergency session," Ral reported, his voice distorted by interference. "They're demanding information about the human vessels. Tell them to order the Skaraxi to stand down immediately," Ziltor replied. "These humans are showing restraint now, but I cannot guarantee that will continue if provoked further." On the tactical display, the Skaraxi command ship launched a new salvo of weapons, brilliant purple streaks that twisted through space in non-Euclidean patterns. Phase-shifted gravitational distorters, T. Larry identified. They're illegal under 17 different Confederation treaties. A tactical officer at a nearby station called out, "Incoming weapons lock, non-standard configuration. Evasive pattern theta authorized." Admiral Reyes nodded once. "Execute. Deploy countermeasures." The Prometheus shuddered slightly as it released what appeared to be simple metal cylinders into space. As the Skaraxi weapons approached, the cylinders detonated, creating a cascade of electromagnetic pulses that caught the incoming projectiles in a web of energy. The weapons detonated harmlessly, their purple fire blossoming and dying in the vacuum. "Kinetic impactors away," called another tactical officer, her fingers dancing across a 3-dimensional interface. From the Prometheus launched what appeared to be simple metal rods, but they accelerated to velocities that made T-Larry's instruments stutter in disbelief. The rods passed through Skaraxi shields as if they weren't there, punching clean through the weapon emplacements without destroying the vessels themselves. Precision kinetics, explained Lieutenant Commander Ishida, noting T-Larry's interest. No explosives, no radiation, just mass and velocity. Most shocking was the communications discipline. While Skaraxi channels filled with panicked chatter that even the translator struggled to parse, the humans operated in near silence, exchanging brief, coded bursts of information. Their coordination was perfect, their execution flawless. A Skaraxi dreadnought, the pride of their illegal fleet, moved to flank the human formation. Admiral Rise noted it on her display with casual indifference. "Initiate Thermopylae protocol," she ordered. Vrak's translation implant struggled with the unfamiliar term, finally providing ancient Earth battle, small force against larger enemy, strategic choke point. The resulting maneuver was unlike anything Ziltor had ever witnessed. The human ships appeared to scatter, opening a clear path for the dreadnought to pass through their formation. The Skaraxi commander took the bait, accelerating into what seemed to be a gap in the defenses. As soon as the dreadnought was committed to its course, the human vessels executed synchronized burns, closing like a fist behind it, while simultaneously launching a series of precisely targeted strikes. The massive Skaraxi vessel suddenly found itself surrounded, its engines disabled, weapons neutralized, and communications jammed, all without destroying the ship or killing its crew. "Astonishing," whispered T-Larry. They disabled a dominant-class dreadnought in 17 seconds. The remaining Skaraxi vessels, witnessing the fate of their flagship, began to retreat. Rather than pursue, the human fleet maintained position, allowing them to escape. Admiral Reyes turned to Ziltor. "Ambassador, we've captured the Skaraxi command vessel intact. I believe there's valuable intelligence aboard that would interest your Confederation Council." "You could have destroyed them all," Vrak stated, not a question but an observation. "We could have," Rise acknowledged, "but that wouldn't serve our larger goal of peaceful relations with your people." The tactical display updated, showing Confederation peacekeeping vessels approaching at maximum speed. Too late to affect the outcome, but in time to witness the aftermath. Ziltor's mandibles clicked in the Vespidian expression of profound realization. "You've just rewritten the balance of power in our sector in less than an hour, Admiral Reyes." The human's slight smile contained neither pride nor arrogance, just quiet certainty. "Consider it our introduction to the galactic community, Ambassador. You should see our engine room," offered Chief Engineer Patel as the battle stabilized, the remaining Skaraxi vessels in full retreat. To Ziltor's astonishment, the humans had already returned to their regular duties, the transition from combat to normal operations as seamless as the initial shift to battle stations. The Confederation peacekeeping vessels had established a perimeter around the disabled Skaraxi dreadnought, their crews clearly stunned by what had transpired. Communications channels buzzed with urgent requests for information about the human ships and their capabilities. "Ambassador, if you're interested in understanding our technology better, I can arrange a tour of our engineering sections," Admiral Rice suggested. "It might help your people contextualize what they've just witnessed." Ziltor exchanged glances with T-Larry, whose translucent skin pulsed with barely contained scientific curiosity. "We would be honored," he replied. Chief Engineer Patel led them through a series of security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last. Unlike the public areas of the ship, these passages featured additional armored bulkheads and what Vrak identified as independent atmosphere systems. "In case of breach," Patel explained, noting Vrak's interest, "each section can maintain its own life support, power, and security protocols." The central power core of the Prometheus humbled even T-Larry, the Confederation's leading expert on energy systems. A contained star burned at the ship's heart, its plasma constrained within overlapping magnetic fields of impossible precision. It's a modified tokamak design, Paddle explained, gesturing toward the pulsing energy core, with some improvements. Improvements. T. Larry couldn't contain her incredulity. You've achieved stable fusion without quantum containment fields. That's not an improvement, it's a fundamental breakthrough. Paddle smiled, running her hand over a control panel. This is actually our tertiary reactor. The primary and secondary systems are housed in separate sections of the ship. More disturbing were the redundancies, backup systems for backup systems, and emergency protocols that assumed catastrophic damage. When Ziltor inquired why such measures were necessary, a human engineer laughed. "This isn't even a dedicated warship," he said, exchanging amused glances with his colleagues. "You should see our actual military vessels." The revelation sent ice through Ziltor's exoskeleton. The ship that had just decimated a Skaraxi battle group wasn't designed primarily for combat. The Prometheus class is a deep space exploration vessel with defensive capabilities, Admiral Rice clarified, perhaps sensing Ziltor's alarm. Our dedicated military vessels remain in the Sol system, protecting Earth and our colonies. A junior officer activated a holographic display showing the Prometheus's sister ships, each with subtle variations in design and capability. "We believe in specialization within standardization," Admiral Rice explained. "Every ship can fight, but each has unique strengths. The Prometheus excels at long-duration missions and first-contact scenarios." The concept was alien to Confederation design philosophy, which prioritized perfect efficiency over adaptability. Confederation shipwrights created vessels for specific purposes. Diplomatic ships had no weapons, research vessels minimal defenses, and military craft few comforts. "Your approach to engineering is unusual," T. Larry noted, studying the reactor specifications with growing fascination. "You build as though expecting failure." "We build acknowledging reality," corrected Patel. "In deep space, there's no repair yard, no rescue. Systems fail. Accidents happen. Unexpected situations arise. Our ships are designed to endure whatever the universe throws at them." As they completed the engineering tour, Ziltor found himself struggling with contradictory impressions. These humans were clearly formidable, their technology in many ways surpassing the Confederation's. Yet they had shown restraint in battle and transparency afterward. "Admiral," he said as they returned to the command deck, "your people are a puzzle. You build ships ready for war while speaking of peace. You design for catastrophe while hoping for harmony." Rice considered his words carefully before responding. "Ambassador, humanity's history taught us a simple truth. Hope without preparation is merely wishful thinking. We desire peaceful relations with the Confederation, but we won't be defenseless in achieving that goal." Before Ziltor could respond, a communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Confederation Council. They're requesting an immediate conference with you and the ambassador." Confederation High Command arrived in force, a flotilla of diplomatic vessels, escorted by what they considered heavy cruisers. From the observation deck of the Prometheus, these ships appeared delicate and ornamental compared to the human vessels, their organic curves and bioluminescent hulls beautiful but fragile. "They're bringing everyone," noted Vrak, his scales shifting to a pattern indicating concern. 16 representatives from all member species. The Emergency Council convened aboard the Prometheus at humanity's invitation, a power move not lost on anyone present. Admiral Rice had offered a conference room for the meeting, but the Confederation Council insisted on inspecting the captured Skaraxi dreadnought first. Standing in the docking bay where the disabled vessel had been secured, High Arbiter Xanthol's gelatinous form quivered with indignation. "The Skaraxi have violated our most sacred principles," the elder statesperson announced, their translator struggling to convey the full emotional resonance of their native speech. Beneath the righteous anger lay fear, not of the Skaraxi, but of the humans who had so casually demolished a fleet that had harassed the Confederation for decades. We have completed our initial analysis of the Skaraxi command systems, Admiral Rice stated, bringing up a holographic display that hovered between the gathered representatives. Lieutenant Commander Ishida will present our findings. Ishida stepped forward, his manner calm and professional. The Skaraxi vessels contained communication logs dating back 7 standard years. They reveal a systematic infiltration of Confederation security systems and government structures. The display shifted to show encrypted communication patterns, shipment manifests, and personnel transfers that, when compiled, painted a disturbing picture. The Skaraxi aren't merely a militant faction, Ishida continued. They're an organized fifth column with agents embedded throughout your government. Their attack on our fleet wasn't random. They were acting on direct orders from elements within your own high command. The accusation sent shockwaves through the assembled dignitaries. Denials and outrage erupted from several representatives, while others fell into stunned silence. "You expect us to believe this?" demanded Councillor Drox of the Mercatian cluster, his prehensile tendrils writhing in agitation. "You appear from unknown space, defy our ships with suspicious ease, and now claim conspiracy. This is transparent manipulation." Admiral Rice remained unperturbed. "We have no interest in Confederation politics, Counselor. We present these findings as a courtesy." Ziltur studied the data scrolling across the display. The evidence was compelling, too detailed to be fabricated, too specific to be coincidental. "We have a common enemy," Admiral Rice stated, her dark eyes scanning the assembled alien dignitaries, "and we propose an alliance." The terms she outlined stunned the Council. Humanity would serve as the Confederation's defensive arm, patrolling borders and responding to threats, but would not be subject to Confederation restrictions on military technology. "This is unprecedented," whispered T. Larry to Ziltur. "No species has joined the Confederation with special exemptions from our foundational treaties." As arguments erupted among the species representatives, Security Chief Rack leaned toward Ziltur. "They're offering to protect us, but on their terms. Are they saviors or conquerors?" Ziltur watched Admiral Reyes calmly sipping water as chaos surrounded her. The humans had made no threatening moves, had shown restraint in battle, and had freely shared intelligence that, if accurate, revealed a grave threat to the Confederation. Yet everything about them, their ships, their technology, their readiness for conflict, suggested a species fundamentally different from any in the Confederation. "Perhaps," he replied to Frack, "the distinction matters less than we thought." High Arbiter Xanthol raised their appendages for silence. "We will require verification of these claims through our own security protocols. In the meantime, we extend provisional diplomatic recognition to humanity and the United Earth government." It was the bare minimum of courtesy, yet Admiral Reyes accepted it with grace. "We understand your caution. Trust must be earned." As the formal proceedings continued, Ziltur couldn't help but notice how the human officers positioned themselves throughout the bay, always near exits, always with clear lines of sight, always prepared. Even in peace, they prepared for war. It was both reassuring and terrifying. The integration ceremony aboard Confederation Central Hub attracted dignitaries from all 17 member species. 3 standard weeks had passed since the confrontation with the Skaraxi, weeks filled with intense negotiation, information exchange, and the gradual verification of human intelligence about the infiltration. The human delegation arrived aboard the Prometheus, which now orbited the massive station like a predator among butterflies. Its hull still bore scars from the brief battle, marks the humans could have easily repaired, but deliberately left visible. "Why haven't you restored your hull integrity?" T. Larry asked Lieutenant Commander Ishida as they stood on an observation deck, watching smaller vessels shuttle between the station and the human flagship. "Battle damage tells a story," Ishida replied. "It reminds us of lessons learned and honors those who served during conflict." The concept was alien to Confederation sensibilities, where perfection and harmony were prized above all. Yet in the weeks since first contact, many such differences had emerged. forcing both sides to reconsider long-held assumptions. Engineering teams from across the galaxy had begged for tours of the vessel, and the humans, surprisingly, had obliged most requests. "We believe in transparency with allies," explained Admiral Reyes during a preliminary council meeting, though everyone understood the subtle message. "We have nothing to hide because you cannot match us regardless." The Skaraxi infiltration had been confirmed by independent Confederation investigators, leading to hundreds of arrests and a fundamental restructuring of security protocols. The evidence provided by humans had proven accurate in every detail, earning them grudging trust even from initially skeptical species. The signing ceremony was brief, the treaty's implications enormous. Humanity would patrol Confederation borders with their advanced ships, while Confederation scientists would share biological and cultural technologies humans hadn't mastered. "This marks a new chapter for both our civilizations," declared High Arbiter Xanthol, their gelatinous form shimmering with formal bioluminescence patterns. "Together we shall build a safer galaxy based on mutual respect and shared knowledge." As celebrations commenced throughout the station, a colorful array of species-specific festivities, Ziltur found Admiral Reyes alone on an observation deck, watching her ship against the backdrop of stars. "Your people fear us," she stated without turning, somehow sensing his presence despite his silent approach. "They should not," Ziltur replied, moving to stand beside her. "For without your intervention, the Skaraxi would have eventually overwhelmed us." Reyes finally turned, her expression unreadable to alien eyes. "Your people fear us," she repeated, "because unlike the Skaraxi, we could have conquered the Confederation, but chose not to." The admission was startling in its frankness. No Confederation species would have stated such a truth so boldly. "Yet you chose alliance over dominance," Ziltur observed. "Why?" The Admiral gestured toward the stars visible beyond the Prometheus. "History is filled with empires that expanded because they could, not because they should. Humanity learned that lesson on Earth through blood and fire." A silence fell between them, not uncomfortable, but weighted with significance. "The Confederation has existed for 12,000 years," Ziltur said finally. "In all that time, we believed ourselves to be the pinnacle of galactic civilization. Your arrival has shown us how much we still have to learn. And we have much to learn from you," Reyes countered. "Your medical technology, your sustainable ecosystems, your harmonious social structures. These are achievements humanity still struggles to perfect." Outside the viewport, ceremonial lights illuminated space around the station, brilliant explosions of color that the humans had called fireworks, a curious tradition the Confederation had eagerly adopted for the occasion. As the Prometheus hung in space, its scarred hull gleaming in the multicolored light, Ziltur understood that the galaxy had not just gained protectors in humans, but something far more valuable, a species that understood the cost of war well enough to avoid unnecessary ones. To new beginnings, he offered in the human tradition of toasts that Admiral Reyes had explained earlier. "To new beginnings," she agreed, "and old wisdom."